Alex Johnson was just a normal guy. He worked as a mechanic in a small town in Ohio. Every day, he would wake up, drink his coffee, and go to work. He fixed cars, went home, watched TV, and went to sleep. It was a simple life, but Alex liked it. One day, something strange happened. Alex was working on an old Ford truck when a bright light filled the garage. It was so bright that Alex had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, he wasn't in the garage anymore. Alex found himself in a big, strange room. The walls were shiny and looked like metal, but they felt warm to the touch. There were no windows, just a single door that looked like it was from a sci-fi movie. Alex's heart was beating fast. He didn't know where he was or how he got there. Suddenly, the door opened. Two tall blue creatures walked in. They had big eyes and long, thin arms. Alex couldn't believe what he was seeing. These were aliens, real aliens. One of the aliens spoke. Its voice sounded like music, but Alex could understand the words. "Human," it said, "you have been chosen." Alex tried to speak, but no words came out. He was too shocked. The alien continued, "You will represent your species in the great intergalactic zoo. It is a great honor." Alex finally found his voice. "Zoo? What do you mean, zoo? I'm not an animal." The aliens looked at each other and made a sound that might have been laughter. "All species are animals," one said. "You will be safe and well cared for. Come with us now." Alex didn't want to go, but he didn't have a choice. The aliens were much stronger than him. They led him out of the room and into a long hallway. Everything was shiny and strange. Alex saw more aliens of different shapes and colors. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with what seemed like pity. They walked for what felt like hours. Finally, they reached a huge room. It was bigger than any building Alex had ever seen. In the center was a massive spaceship. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "This is the mothership of Queen Zix," one of the aliens said. "She rules over 1,000 worlds. You should feel honored to be in her presence." Alex didn't feel honored. He felt scared and angry. But there was nothing he could do as they led him onto the ship. Inside, the ship was even more amazing. There were rooms full of strange machines and corridors that seemed to go on forever. Alex saw hundreds of aliens, all busy with their tasks. None of them paid much attention to him. Finally, they reached a large, circular room. In the center was a throne, and on the throne sat the strangest creature Alex had ever seen. She, Alex assumed it was a she, was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. She had 4 arms and 3 eyes, all focused on Alex. "So," Queen Zix said, her voice deep and powerful, "this is the human specimen." She stood up and walked around Alex, looking at him from all angles. "How fragile you look. How weak." Alex wanted to argue, to defend himself and his species, but he was too overwhelmed. He just stood there, feeling small and helpless. Queen Zix laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You will make an excellent addition to our zoo. The other species will be fascinated by your primitive form." With a wave of her hand, Queen Zix dismissed Alex. The aliens who had brought him took him away, leading him to another part of the ship. As they walked, Alex's fear began to turn into anger. He wasn't an animal to be put in a zoo. He was a human being, with rights and dignity. And somehow, someway, he was going to show these aliens just how strong humans could be. But for now, all he could do was follow his captors, his mind racing with plans of escape and revenge. Little did Queen Zix know, she had just made the biggest mistake of her life by underestimating the resilience and cleverness of the human spirit. Alex was led through winding corridors of the alien mothership. His mind was still reeling from the encounter with Queen Zix. The 2 blue aliens guiding him remained silent, their long arms occasionally brushing against him as they walked. Finally, they reached a large, circular room. Alex's jaw dropped. The room was filled with what looked like glass cages, each containing different alien creatures. Some were small and furry, others were large and scaly. Some floated in liquid, while others crawled on multiple legs. "This is the intergalactic zoo," one of the blue aliens explained. "And this," it said, pointing to a small, empty cage, "is your new home." Before Alex could protest, he was pushed into the cage. A transparent barrier slid into place, trapping him inside. The cage was barely big enough for him to stand up straight or lie down. There was a small bed, a strange-looking toilet, and nothing else. "Hey!" Alex shouted, banging on the barrier. "You can't do this. I'm a human being, not some animal." The aliens ignored him. They pressed some buttons on a panel next to the cage, and suddenly, Alex felt a strange tingling all over his body. "We have adjusted the atmosphere in your enclosure to match Earth's," one alien explained. "You will be comfortable here." Comfortable? Alex wanted to laugh. How could he be comfortable in a tiny cage, on display like some exotic pet? Hours passed. Alex paced in his small space, tried to find weak spots in the barrier, and shouted for help. But no one came. Other aliens walked by, looking at him with curiosity or indifference. Suddenly, a loud voice boomed through the room. "Attention, all visitors. We have a special treat for you today. Our newest specimen, a human from the planet Earth, will now be presented by Her Majesty, Queen Zix." The room filled with alien spectators. They crowded around Alex's cage, their strange eyes all fixed on him. Alex felt like he was going to be sick. Queen Zix glided into the room, her shimmering body catching the light. She stood in front of Alex's cage, a cruel smile on her face. "Behold," she said, her voice echoing through the room, "a human, one of the dominant species of the primitive planet Earth." The crowd murmured with interest. Queen Zix continued, "Observe its fragile form. Its soft skin offers no protection. It has no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons of any kind. It is slow, weak, and incredibly vulnerable." Alex felt his face grow hot with anger and shame. He wanted to shout, to argue, but he knew it would only amuse the Queen more. "Watch as it attempts to communicate," Queen Zix said, gesturing to Alex. "Speak, human. Show us your primitive language." Alex remained silent, glaring at the Queen. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Queen Zix laughed. "Perhaps it's too simple to understand commands. Let's see how it reacts to stimuli." She pressed a button on the control panel. Suddenly, the floor of Alex's cage became very cold. Alex gasped, jumping from foot to avoid the freezing surface. The alien crowd laughed and chittered. Queen Zix looked pleased. See how easily it's affected by minor changes in its environment. Truly a fragile specimen. For the next hour, Queen Zix demonstrated different features of the human exhibit. She made the cage hot, then cold again. She played loud noises that made Alex cover his ears. She even released a horrible smell into the cage that made Alex gag. Through it all, Alex refused to speak or show any reaction beyond what he couldn't control. He wouldn't give them the show they wanted. Finally, Queen Zix seemed to grow bored. "As you can see," she said to the crowd, "humans are simple, fragile creatures. They are barely sentient, driven by basic needs, and unable to adapt to even minor challenges. They are so far beneath us that it's almost amusing." With that, she swept out of the room, the crowd of alien spectators following her. Alex was left alone in his cage, humiliated and angry. But as the hours passed and the room grew quiet, something changed in Alex. The anger didn't fade, but it transformed. It became cold, focused. He looked around his cage with new eyes, searching for anything he could use. These aliens thought humans were weak, stupid, and helpless. They had no idea what humans were capable of when pushed too far. Alex might be trapped now, but he wasn't going to stay that way. As he lay on his small bed that night, Alex made a promise to himself. He was going to show these aliens exactly how dangerous a fragile human could be. And Queen Zix, she was going to regret ever bringing him here. With that thought, Alex closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to plan. The aliens' reckoning was coming, and he was going to make sure it was one they'd never forget. Days passed in the intergalactic zoo. Alex lost track of time, but he never lost his determination. He watched everything around him, learning the routines of the aliens who ran the zoo. He studied the technology they used, even though he couldn't understand most of it. One day, while Alex was pretending to sleep, he heard a strange noise. It was coming from the wall behind his bed. Curious, he pressed his ear against the wall. The sound was faint, but it reminded him of the broken machines he used to fix back on Earth. When the zoo was quiet that night, Alex carefully moved his bed. There, in the corner where the bed had been, was a small panel. It was barely noticeable, but Alex's trained eye caught it immediately. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then, using his fingernails, he pried the panel open. Inside was a mess of wires and small, glowing objects. Alex's heart raced. This must be part of the cage's control system. Alex knew he had to be careful. If he damaged the wrong thing, he could hurt himself or alert the aliens. But this was his chance. He had to try something. Over the next few days, Alex studied the panel whenever he could. He figured out which parts controlled the temperature, which ones were for the force field, and which ones seemed to be for communication. One night, while experimenting, Alex accidentally touched two wires together. There was a small spark, and suddenly, a holographic screen appeared in front of him. Alex almost shouted in surprise but managed to keep quiet. The screen was filled with alien writing. Alex couldn't read it, but he recognized some symbols that looked like numbers. He remembered how the aliens had pressed buttons to change things in his cage. Maybe this was the control system for the whole zoo. Alex spent hours trying different combinations. Most did nothing, but sometimes he'd make a light flicker or hear a distant door open. He was learning, slowly but surely. Then, one night, Alex made a breakthrough. He found a sequence that made a small part of the force field flicker. It only lasted for a second, but it was enough. Alex now knew he could escape if he could just figure out the right combination. But escaping wasn't enough. Alex wanted to understand this technology. He wanted to use it. So instead of trying to break out, he focused on learning more. Alex discovered that he could access different systems through the panel. He found blueprints of the ship, communication channels, and even personnel files. He couldn't read most of it, but he was starting to recognize patterns. One file caught his attention. It had a picture that looked like Earth. Alex's heart pounded as he opened it. The file was full of information about humans. As he scrolled through, Alex realized something shocking. The aliens had seriously underestimated humans. According to their files, humans were classified as a low-intelligence species. They thought humans couldn't adapt to new environments, couldn't understand complex technology, and had no special abilities. Alex almost laughed out loud. If only they knew. Humans had survived in every environment on Earth. They had created amazing technology. And they had something the aliens hadn't considered: creativity and determination. With this knowledge, Alex's plan began to take shape. The aliens thought humans were stupid and weak. That was their big mistake. Alex was going to use their own technology against them, and they would never see it coming. Over the next few days, Alex worked tirelessly. He learned to manipulate the control panel, making small changes that the aliens didn't notice. He figured out how to access the zoo's communication system. He even managed to create a small device from spare parts he found in the panel. This device was Alex's secret weapon. It could intercept and send signals through the alien network. It wasn't powerful, but it was enough for what Alex had in mind. As he worked, Alex thought about Earth. He thought about all the human accomplishments throughout history. People who had overcome impossible odds, who had invented world-changing technologies, who had survived in the harshest conditions. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for all of humanity. He was going to show these aliens that humans were not to be underestimated. With his new understanding and his secret device, Alex was ready. The next phase of his plan was about to begin. The aliens had no idea what was coming. They thought they had captured a simple, fragile human. Instead, they had caged a creature of incredible adaptability and determination. As Alex lay down to rest, a small smile played on his lips. Tomorrow, he would start to turn the tables. Tomorrow, he would begin to show the true power of humanity. And Queen Zix, she was about to learn a very painful lesson about underestimating her simple human captive. Alex woke up early the next day, his mind buzzing with ideas. He had spent weeks learning about the alien technology, and now it was time to put his knowledge to use. His first goal was to contact Earth. Using the small device he had built, Alex began to send out signals. He didn't know if they would reach Earth, but he had to try. He sent the same message over and over. Human captive on alien ship, send help. For days, there was no response. But Alex didn't give up. He kept sending the message, changing the frequency and pattern each time. While he waited for a response, Alex started the next part of his plan. He needed allies. He looked at the other creatures in the zoo. Many of them seemed sad or angry, just like him. Maybe they would help him if he could communicate with them. Alex started with the creature in the cage next to his. It looked like a big furry ball with eyes. Using his device, Alex tried to send simple messages to it. At first, there was no reaction. But after a few days, the creature started to respond. It would move closer to Alex's cage when he sent a message. Slowly, Alex began to communicate with more creatures in the zoo. He couldn't understand their languages, but he could send simple ideas using pictures and movements. He told them about his plan to escape and fight back against Queen Zix. Many of the creatures seemed excited by the idea. They too wanted to be free. Alex realized he was building an army right under the noses of the aliens. One night, as Alex was working on his device, he received a shock. A message came through, in English. "This is Earth Command. We receive you. Help is coming." Alex almost shouted with joy. Earth had heard him. They were sending help. But he knew he had to be careful. The aliens couldn't find out about this. Over the next few days, Alex communicated with Earth Command. He told them everything he had learned about the alien ship and its defenses. He explained his plan and asked for their help. Earth Command agreed to send a rescue mission, but it would take time for them to reach the alien ship. Alex needed to be ready when they arrived. He stepped up his efforts to organize the other creatures in the zoo. Using his device, he sent them instructions on how to disable the force fields on their cages. He taught them about the ship's layout and where they could find weapons. All the while, Alex had to pretend nothing was happening. When the alien zookeepers came by, he acted bored and defeated. When Queen Zix visited to mock the primitive human, Alex bit his tongue and stayed quiet. Inside, though, he was laughing. The queen had no idea what was coming. As the days passed, tension grew in the zoo. The creatures were restless, waiting for Alex's signal. Earth's rescue ships were getting closer. Alex knew they would only have one chance to make this work. The night before the planned escape, Alex couldn't sleep. He went over the plan in his head again and again. First, he would disable the force fields. Then, he and the other creatures would break out of their cages. They would make their way to the ship's control room and take over. When Earth's ships arrived, Alex and his alien allies would open the hangar doors and let them in. Together, they would confront Queen Zix and end her cruel reign. It was a dangerous plan. Many things could go wrong. But Alex knew it was their only chance. He thought about all the creatures counting on him, about Earth sending help, about Queen Zix's cruel laughter. He couldn't fail. As he lay in his cage, pretending to sleep, Alex heard a soft sound. He opened his eyes to see the furry creature in the next cage watching him. It made a gentle chirping noise, almost like it was trying to encourage him. Alex smiled. He wasn't alone in this fight. He had allies, both here on the ship and coming from Earth. Together, they would show Queen Zix and all the aliens that humans, and indeed all the creatures they had underestimated, were far stronger than they knew. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, they would fight for their freedom. And Alex, the fragile human, would lead the charge. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Alex's last thought was of Earth. Soon, he would see his home again. But first, he had a queen to dethrone and a point to prove. Humans were not weak. They were not simple, and they were definitely not to be underestimated. The day of the uprising dawned like any other on the alien mothership. The lights in the zoo slowly brightened, imitating a sunrise. But today was different. Today, everything would change. Alex woke up early, his heart pounding with excitement and fear. He checked his homemade device one last time. Earth's rescue ships were close. It was time to act. He sent a signal to all the creatures in the zoo. It was a simple message. Now. Suddenly, the quiet zoo erupted into chaos. Force fields flickered and died. Cages opened. Creatures of all shapes and sizes poured out, following the plan Alex had laid out. Alex's cage was the last to open. He stepped out, feeling a rush of freedom. But there was no time to celebrate. He had to lead the charge. The first alien guard appeared, looking confused. Before it could raise an alarm, the furry creature from the cage next to Alex jumped on it. The guard went down without a sound. Alex ran to the control panel near the zoo entrance. Using the knowledge he'd gained, he locked down the area. No one could get in or out without his permission now. "Follow me," he shouted to the freed creatures. They might not understand his words, but they knew what to do. They had practiced this in their minds for days. The group moved through the ship's corridors. They encountered more guards, but the element of surprise was on their side. The aliens never expected their primitive captives to fight back. Alex led them to the weapons storage he had discovered in the ship's blueprints. They broke in, arming themselves with strange alien weapons. Alex grabbed something that looked like a gun. He hoped he was holding it the right way. As they made their way towards the ship's control room, alarms began to blare. The aliens had finally realized what was happening. The real fight was about to begin. Alien guards poured into the corridor, weapons ready. But Alex and his team were ready too. They fought back with everything they had. Alex was amazed at how well they worked together. Creatures that couldn't even speak to each other were fighting side by side, protecting each other. The battle was intense. Alien weapons fired, lighting up the corridor with strange colors. Alex ducked and dodged, his heart racing. He had never been in a fight like this before, but he couldn't give up. Too much depended on their success. Slowly, they pushed forward. Alex's knowledge of the ship's layout proved invaluable. He led them through shortcuts and secret passages, avoiding the worst of the alien defenses. Finally, they reached the control room. The door was sealed, but Alex had prepared for this. He used his device to override the lock. The door slid open. Inside, alien technicians looked up in shock. Before they could react, Alex and his team stormed in. In minutes, the control room was theirs. Alex rushed to the main console. He had to open the hangar doors for the Earth ships. His hands flew over the alien controls, putting all his practice to use. On the big screen in front of him, he saw Earth's ships approaching. His heart leaped. Help was here. But their fight wasn't over. Queen Zix's voice boomed over the ship's speakers. "Attention all crew. Crush this pathetic rebellion. Show these primitive creatures their place." Alex gritted his teeth. He opened a channel to the Earth ships. "This is Alex Johnson. We've taken control of the alien mothership. Request immediate assistance." The reply came quickly. Roger that, Alex. We're coming in. Hold on. The hangar doors opened. Earth ships streamed in, engaging the alien defenses. The mothership shook with the force of the battle. Alex turned to his team of freed creatures. We need to hold this room. Everything depends on it. They nodded, understanding the urgency in his voice. They barricaded the doors, preparing for the counterattack they knew was coming. Soon, they heard pounding on the doors. Alien forces were trying to break in. Alex and his team held their ground, using the control room's defenses to fight back. As the battle raged, Alex couldn't help but smile. Here he was, a fragile human, leading an uprising against an advanced alien civilization. He thought of Queen Zix and her mocking words. He hoped she was watching. He hoped she finally understood how wrong she had been. The door began to glow red. The aliens were burning through. Alex raised his weapon, ready for the final stand. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for sure. He had proven that humans were anything but weak. They were strong, adaptable, and most of all, they never, ever gave up. As the door began to melt, Alex shouted to his team, "Get ready. Show them what we're made of." The uprising had begun, and now, it was time to finish it. The door to the control room finally gave way with a loud bang. Smoke filled the air as alien soldiers poured in. Alex and his team of freed creatures fought back fiercely. The room was filled with the sound of alien weapons and the cries of battle. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. Enough. The fighting stopped. The smoke cleared, revealing Queen Zix standing in the doorway. She looked furious, her 3 eyes glowing with anger. "You," she hissed, pointing at Alex. "You dared to challenge me. You, a simple, fragile human." Alex stood tall, facing the alien queen. "I'm not just a human," he said. "I'm the human who outsmarted your entire empire." Queen Zix laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Outsmarted? You've merely caused a minor inconvenience. Did you really think you could win against us?" "I don't think," Alex replied. "I know." At that moment, the ship shook violently. On the main screen, they could see Earth ships breaching the mothership's defenses. Alex smiled. "Looks like the cavalry has arrived." Queen Zix's face twisted with rage. "You brought more humans here. You'll all pay for this." She raised her weapon, aiming it at Alex. But Alex was quicker. He dodged the shot and rolled behind a console. The other creatures scattered, taking cover where they could. "You still don't get it, do you?" Alex called out. "You think we're weak because we're different from you, but our differences are our strength." He peeked out from his hiding spot. Queen Zix was moving closer, her weapon ready. "Look around you," Alex continued. "All these creatures you thought were inferior. We worked together. We communicated despite not speaking the same language. We fought side by side." Silence. Queen Zix shouted. She fired again, missing Alex by inches. Alex moved to a new position. He needed to keep her talking, keep her distracted. "You know why we succeeded?" he asked. "Because we adapted. That's what humans do best. We face challenges, and we overcome them. We see problems, and we solve them." Queen Zix was getting closer. Alex could see the fury in her eyes. "Your adaptability means nothing," she spat. "You are still no match for our advanced civilization." Alex laughed. "Advanced? You couldn't even keep a simple human contained. Face it, Your Majesty. You underestimated us. All of us." With a roar of anger, Queen Zix lunged at Alex. But he was ready. Using a move he had seen in countless action movies, Alex sidestepped and used the Queen's momentum against her. She stumbled, crashing into a control panel. Sparks flew as the panel short-circuited. The ship's lights flickered. Alex saw his chance. He grabbed a loose piece of equipment and swung it at the Queen's weapon. It connected with a clang, knocking the weapon from her hands. Queen Zix looked at Alex in shock. For the first time, There was fear in her eyes. "Impossible," she whispered. Alex picked up the Queen's dropped weapon. "No," he said, "not impossible, just human." At that moment, Earth soldiers burst into the control room. They quickly secured the area, rounding up the alien soldiers. Alex kept his eyes on Queen Zix. "It's over," he said. "You've lost." The Queen's shoulders sagged in defeat. What will you do with me?" she asked. Alex thought for a moment. He remembered all the humiliation, all the cruelty he had endured. Part of him wanted revenge. But then he looked around at the freed creatures, at the Earth soldiers. They were all watching him, waiting to see what he would do. "We're not like you," Alex said finally. "We don't believe in keeping sentient beings in cages or treating them as inferiors. You'll face justice for your actions, but it will be fair justice." He turned to the Earth soldiers. "Take her into custody. Make sure she's treated humanely." As the soldiers led Queen Zix away, she looked back at Alex. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "we did underestimate you after all." Alex watched her go, feeling a mix of emotions. They had won, but the fight had changed him. He had discovered strengths he never knew he had. One of the Earth soldiers approached him. "Sir," she said, "the ship is secure. What are your orders?" Alex blinked in surprise. They were asking him for orders. He looked around the control room, at the creatures who had fought beside him, at the advanced alien technology surrounding them. He took a deep breath. "Contact Earth," he said. Tell them the human spirit has triumphed. And we're coming home." The days following the uprising were a whirlwind of activity. Alex found himself at the center of it all, coordinating between the Earth forces, his alien allies, and the defeated crew of the mothership. As news of their victory spread, more alien ships arrived. But they didn't come to fight. They came to negotiate. The fall of Queen Zix had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Suddenly, humans were no longer seen as simple creatures to be captured and displayed. They were a force to be reckoned with. Alex stood on the bridge of the mothership, looking out at the stars. An Earth admiral approached him. "Mr. Johnson," she said, "it's time." Alex nodded. It was time to address not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. He took a deep breath and stepped in front of the communication array. "Greetings," he began. "My name is Alex Johnson. A few weeks ago, I was just a mechanic from Ohio. Today, I speak to you as the representative of humanity." He paused, looking at the diverse group around him. Humans, freed alien creatures, even some of Queen Zix's former crew who had chosen to ally with them. "What happened here was not just a human victory," Alex continued. "It was a triumph of unity, of cooperation between different species. It was proof that diversity is not a weakness, but a strength." He thought of his time in the zoo, of the friendships he had formed despite language barriers. "We've shown that communication and understanding can overcome any obstacle, that intelligence and adaptability are not limited to any one species." Alex's voice grew stronger. "To those who would seek to dominate others, to treat sentient beings as less than themselves, hear this: we will not allow it. Humanity, and all the species who stand with us, reject the idea that any race has the right to enslave or mistreat another." He looked directly into the camera. "But to those who wish to coexist peacefully, to explore and learn together, we extend a hand in friendship. The galaxy is vast, with wonders we have yet to imagine. Let's discover them together." As Alex finished his speech, the room erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens alike celebrated this new beginning. In the days that followed, much changed. The intergalactic zoo was dismantled. Its occupants returned to their homeworlds, or given the choice to explore the galaxy freely. Queen Zix faced trial, not just for her treatment of humans, but for her actions against all the species she had deemed inferior. Earth took its place in the galactic community. The technology from the mothership accelerated human advancement by centuries. But more importantly, the bonds formed during the uprising led to alliances with numerous alien species. Alex found himself serving as an ambassador, traveling to different worlds, sharing the story of the uprising and fostering understanding between species. He never forgot his time in the zoo and worked tirelessly to ensure no sentient being would ever be caged like that again. One day, years later, Alex returned to Ohio. He stood in the garage where he had been working when the aliens first took him. It seemed like a lifetime ago. A soft chirp made him turn. The furry creature that had been in the cage next to his in the zoo stood in the doorway. It had become one of his closest friends and allies. "Ready to go?" Alex asked with a smile. The creature chirped again, moving to his side. As they walked out, Alex looked up at the stars. They didn't seem distant and unreachable anymore. They were filled with friends, allies, and endless possibilities. Alex thought about how far he had come, how far humanity had come. From being seen as simple, fragile creatures to becoming a respected member of the galactic community. It had been a hard journey, but a worthwhile one. As he and his alien friend boarded their ship, ready for their next diplomatic mission, Alex felt a sense of pride and hope. The galaxy was vast, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with diverse life, each species unique and valuable. And humanity, once ridiculed and underestimated, now stood tall among them. Not as conquerors, but as partners. Not as superiors, but as equals. They had proven that being human meant being adaptable, innovative, and above all, unbreakable in spirit. As the ship took off, carrying them towards new adventures, Alex smiled. The future was bright, and it belonged to all of them, together.